Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 4C Marketplace podcast. I am your host, Uzkar Ibrahim. Welcome you back to the podcast where we interview the best minds in the environmental industry. Today, we have as our guest Joshua Pinter. Joshua Pinter works for CNTRAL. CNTRAL is a LDAR software company focused on the LDAR segment of the environmental compliance realm. Josh, without further ado, I'd like to take this chance to give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, my name is Josh Pinter. I've been working with CNTRAL for quite a while now. I think it's probably coming up on a decade here. Company got started about 10 years ago, a little longer than that, and I was one of the first software programmers to come on board and just kind of working my way through the industry and kind of up the ranks at CNTRAL. And the deeper I get into it, the more interesting problems you get to solve. So,
right. Give me a kind of a history lesson here. You said CNTRAL has been around for 10 years. How did it start and what was it like being at the beginning of that company development process?
So the company got started by field inspectors.
Okay.
That saw a need for better software. And funny enough, it got started because of infrared video, right? So yeah, when you do inspections with just numbers and text and things like that, it's quite easy to use a spreadsheet, a piece of paper,
right? All
those kinds of things. But when you introduce video, which again, like in the States, so the company got started in Canada, and in Canada at the time, they were starting to roll out the infrared camera inspections.
Right.
And so all of a sudden you need to keep all this video. You need to manage it, store it, transcode it so that you can play it on different, operating systems, Mac, Windows, different browsers, Firefox, IE, that kind of stuff. And so that introduces a bunch of technical problems that just couldn't be solved with kind of the existing kind of methodologies like spreadsheets and, access databases and stuff. So that's where I got hired on the company to essentially start building out the first version of our mobile product that runs on iPad, essentially tablets in the fields to record that video.
Right. So you've probably seen the development of the handhelds throughout your time, and you guys have developed your software along those lines, I'm sure.
Yeah. And it was, it's funny how things have changed. Like things have changed, but they've more or less stayed the same. Like the technology has gotten a little better.
Right.
So you can do more things. Like I remember the first version of our kind of mobile solution to record infrared video, which now is kind of a big thing with Quad OA States, right? And it's funny because, that was, I don't know, late 2000s. So the economy kind of tanked. And so nobody really cared about, nobody was developing new regulations and whatnot for environment.
Right. And it wasn't there. And the market wasn't too hot at that time, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's just trying to keep the companies afloat, right? Absolutely. So no one's going above and beyond what the regulations say. So that kind of died off. And then now what's nice is, Quad OA is kind of picking up. And so we're kind of seeing that come back. And so it's kind of funny that that's really the area that we started. So we've been waiting for kind of Quad OA to drop for about 10 years, technology wise. So that's all set up and so we're in a good spot there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the first version of our mobile app had, because again, you didn't really have, I don't even think iPad was even released back then. So
is this early 2000s?
This would be late 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think iPhone was 2006 or something.
I see.
So anyway, it was, even if it was, it wouldn't be ready for prime time. So we had to have essentially kind of a mobile Windows machine. And then to get the IR video in, we had to tether it with like 3 or 4 different adapters. So it was kind of like dongle hell. And we had to order these kind of from, China.
Right.
And get them through the border because essentially the codecs or I don't know, basically they would allow you to stream stuff without any kind of content management. And so they weren't actually allowed to be sold in the US or Canada. So it was kind of a nightmare. We've come a long way since then, that's for sure.
No, it's really, really good. And it gives me a really good picture of how you guys work. I can already tell that you guys are very good at adapting to whatever it is or whatever platform hurdles that you have at the time. So that's really interesting to see. And you kind of described it right there, but I guess in your words, what do you think is the value proposition of CNTRAL? And how do you guys really differentiate yourselves from other software providers in the market?
It's tough to say, right? Like it's probably better to ask a client of ours to see what they say. But, I think our big thing is, for better or worse, we're a company filled with software engineers and hardware experts. So, basically we're using the latest and greatest software and technology out there.
Right. So you guys are more technology centric and in your focus, really trying to align it with the most up-to-date trends on the analytics side of the house, as opposed to maybe more focus on the field side of the house, if you'd say?
I wouldn't say that, because it really, on the field side is really where most of our technology shines. We just use the latest and greatest, right? So I think some of the hardware, like this industry in general, this enterprise in general is kind of between 3 and energy, kind of oil and gas sector is kind of between like 3 and 10 years behind the technology curve. Just takes longer. We're not taking Instagram photos and things like that. These are real world applications. People have to do their job
Absolutely.
with this stuff. So things are a little bit delayed, and then they're delayed even further because some of the best minds in the industry end up going to companies like Instagram and Google and stuff. So
right.
The people that are really pushing the boundaries, not even pushing the boundaries, just kind of keeping up, right, with modern technology, they tend to go work for companies like Google, like Apple,
that are more the technology sector as opposed to the energy sector.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I would be if I didn't get hooked into this,
right?
And see the kind of problems that you can solve and how you can change people's lives.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So what is it for you? Is it, as you said, the ability to make impact in something that's you perceive as very important?
Yeah, I think, it definitely is important. I think just in running your business or running your assets, in a good way with kind of tight maintenance schedules and knowing what's out there and knowing what's going on is super important. Like if you asked anybody, nobody says like, oh, I wish my stuff was leaking more, right? Like nobody says that, right? They all want stuff to leak either minimally to function or not at all, preferably. So, but the problem is that that's difficult to do. It's really difficult to do. And there's a ton of money and time and energy and frustration that goes into doing the best they can to make sure that doesn't happen, right? And I think even just compliance in general is really tough. So everybody wants to do the right thing, but sometimes that's too hard. Yeah, it ends up being almost like you can't because it's too onerous to actually do. And either to do it all or to do and stay profitable, right? So there's got to be the tools in place and you look at the EPA and these regulations and documents and man, it's not easy to stay on top of this stuff and to know where you're out of compliance. So, at CNTRAL, like one of our kind of core mottos is like, we make it easy to do the right thing. And that's kind of what keeps pushing us along, right? Is like, how do we make it easier for people to know when they're out of compliance or when they're in compliance or when something is a chronic issue and needs to be replaced. So we try to bring that information to them as much as possible, so that they feel good that, they're doing their jobs right. They feel good about what they're doing. And, heaven forbid, it's almost fun to do that stuff, right?
So you guys step in and you really give these, entrepreneurial, very forward-looking, fast-moving energy companies the ability to know that they're compliant and to have confidence in that, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think our competitors, that's their goal too. Like all of this comes down to compliance, right? Like, everybody wants to run, a tight ship and have their equipment run properly. But at the end of the day, like a lot of this stuff is because the government says we have to, or their regulatory bodies say that we have to do this stuff.
Right. Have you found that there's a, commercial benefit to the environmental side through the work that you, from the compliance side? I know everyone always wants to focus on compliance because it is the law, but from your perspective, have you seen, commercial benefits to the environmental compliance side?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I don't know if we, like part of CNTRAL's kind of unique value prop is that, and this is kind of more on the upstream side where like the well sites and even midstream side,
right?
There's actual dollar values on that. And we actually do like a kind of a payback period analysis in CNTRAL automatically,
right? Just
based on the equipment and how much it would cost to fix, like estimated cost to fix. And then I think we take the natural gas price every night. So we have an updated kind of natural gas price. And we just kind of figure out like, what's the payback period on something like this? So something that isn't a compliance issue,
right? But
it's still like an issue, right? Like it's still something that's leaking more than it should or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
So that's one of our things that we do is we kind of show those dollar values. And we say like, things like throughout this year, you've leaked this much, it costs you this much, but because you repaired these items, you're now saving X amount of dollars per year.
Right. In terms of you guys being able to do a project, that's always an important consideration for these potential clients to factor.
Yeah. And I think, the fact is like economically, I think, and again, I don't know these numbers, but fairly willing to say that more often than not, it definitely costs more than you're saving, let's say. But that being said, depending on kind of what you're, which area you're doing, like, the downstream stuff, the refineries, chemical plants, like they're really well managed, and it takes a lot of effort and money to do that, right?
Absolutely.
on some of the other sides of things like well sites, right, where compressor stations, where maybe the regulations are a bit more lax,
Right.
you go into those sites and, you could start breaking even by just keeping your product in the pipe.
Right.
And then there's a whole bunch of other like good benefits, right? Environmental, just workers not having to deal with that kind of the fumes and the smells and that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of really good reasons to do it. Economically, it's not like you're saving millions of dollars by finding these leaks.
Right.
On occasion, we've had leaks where companies have saved like, it's $100,000 leak or something like that. It was like an underground thing, and they discovered it through IR, infrared inspection.
No, absolutely. It's almost like the process of transparency, because what you don't know and what you don't measure, you don't improve.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Everybody wants to, well, I think for the most part, from my experience, like everybody wants to do the right thing, and the more information they know, like they want to close their, why do we make lists, like to-do lists? Because we want to check them off.
Absolutely.
Like it's a good feeling, right? And it's something to show ourselves. It's something to show our boss.
No, that's really good. So I want to take a step back from the company side and really just try to find out a way to maybe connect you to some of the customer experience or the client experience or the audience experience. But since your time working at CNTRAL for the past 10 years, what's been the most interesting insight or observation you've gained from this industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's probably, like, if I think about it more stuff will pop up. But I think the biggest one is like just on a personal level, right? Like, why am I here instead of at Google or Apple, right?
Right.
Like somebody with my training experience, like that's where they generally flock to, right? And it's actually, again, it's difficult to find somebody that kind of stays in like an enterprise space.
Right.
And for me, like there's a lot of problems that you can solve, a lot of problems you can solve and kind of things that you can streamline in this space by using not even like futuristic technology, just technology that we're accustomed to on our smartphones, right? Stuff that's come out maybe 3 years ago, but hasn't hit enterprise. And
what do you think that gap of coverage exists? Because I kind of get that feel too when I'm interviewing other people or having conversations with people within the sector. Why do you think that gap of technology exists within the sector now? And is it a matter of compliance, or is it a matter of internal compliance where applying a new technology is looked and viewed in the lens of a risk management type of exercise as a means of reining in, as opposed to are people just not as adaptive?
Yeah, it's a bunch of stuff, to be honest with you. It's a bunch of stuff. So that gap's actually really useful because, like I was saying before, is when you're taking cat photos with your camera to share with your friends online or whatever.
Every Sunday.
It doesn't have to work. Right. Yeah, that's right. Who doesn't, right? Or like taking, your scrambled eggs picture or whatever. Like it doesn't have to work. Like if that doesn't work or it crashes, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Who cares? Like your morning's ruined, maybe. But when you're talking about enterprise stuff, like, and that's something that I get personally excited about is, let's say the far end of the spectrum is kind of like nuclear reactors, rocket science, things like that. So those things need to work, right? So that's on the very, very far end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum is like cat pictures, but that's the thing. And so the enterprise software, and again, even in the middle, there's a ton of it. There's a bunch of spectrum, but and I think it's in this space, at least, it's less about, is this going to blow up or something? Like there's a little bit of that, but what we're doing, it's not really about that because those precautions are already taken care of by gas detectors, that kind of stuff. But what we're talking about is somebody going to lose an hour of work, a day of work, right?
So you're making the user experience a lot better for these field inspectors who, aren't accustomed or may not be exposed to the latest tools to solve issues of scale, essentially.
Well, yeah, I mean, the bottom line is like, I think one of my greatest things and like what keeps me in it is whenever we do, I try to be involved with, whenever we pick up like a new inspection company, a new service partner, and we train people in the field, I try to be involved with that the first times as much as possible because I love seeing like they start using it and they start inventorying and they smile.
Right.
Right. Like who smiles when they're inventorying a chemical plant? And that's what gets me. That's what kind of keeps me going in a big way. So
yeah, no, customer focus. You can't go wrong with a good customer focus.
No, I mean, that's all that's the entire reason why we're kind of doing this, right? Is because, and the thing is we don't do field work ourselves. Like we build software, right? And we work with hardware partners to have the best tablets, to have the best gas detectors, to have the best GPS devices and,
Absolutely.
all sorts of stuff, right? But so we don't do the field work ourselves. So it's very much a partnership where we provide the tools but we rely on them to do good work. Right. So we don't allow just anybody to use our software and become CNTRAL certified. Like, it's a training course. They have to go through this stuff and they have to do good work. And if they stop doing good work, because that's the problem is, like, if you do bad inspection work, doesn't matter how good the software is, the data is going to come out crap. Right. And that's not good for us. It's not good for them. So, we try to keep that kind of level of excellence, on our team and anybody that we kind of partner with and certify. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, I've actually spoken to some other companies, and especially within the sector, this is not, these are not mass market products, as you mentioned. This isn't a Google or Instagram type of deal. So having that education period of your product is super critical to that long-term user experience and satisfaction. So that's interesting that you brought that training aspect up, because I see that time and time again as a critical piece to the success or failure of your product at any client site. So
yeah, 100%. And I think, the goal is to make the software so easy that you don't need training. But let's be honest, right? You've got to feel comfortable with it, right? And yeah, and so, the idea is, like, we want them to kind of know the software almost as well as we do, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Because they end up being the first line of support for the plant owner, right? In a lot of cases. So the more that they know, the more they feel empowered, the more they feel comfortable doing stuff. So
and confidence is key.
Yeah, exactly. And just to get back to your why there's that gap too is kind of like you said, it's not mass product, right? So, like, let's be honest, if you're going to spend time building a product, you look at like the Googles and the Instagram and stuff, like those are much bigger markets, right?
Everybody needs search and everyone wants to look at cat pictures, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's right. So, just that market size, like when you think about venture capital and things like that, they look into, markets of, tens of millions of users, right? Or at least millions of users.
Where the valuation of the addressable market has to be in the billions, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. So I feel like a lot of the time, like money and all that kind of stuff gets focused on, just other areas for better or worse, right?
I just want to take another step back here and reorient the conversation slightly. So we've discussed, the market as you see it now, kind of the pain points that you're solving for your customers. The next thing I really wanted to ask is, you guys are actively planning for one, but what do you think either trend, industry, or technology is going to have the greatest impact on the industry as you see it over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, you're going to have to wait till 4C and come see my talk.
There it is. Maybe a little teaser for the folks here.
Yeah, I think so. My talk is called something like The Future of Technology in LDAR.
Right.
And yeah, I think where we're at now, like with the CNTRAL platform and various products, I'm really excited about just where we're at now. Right. And I see some things coming, in the next, 3 to 5 years that are starting to show up now. But
is this technology or is it regulatory? Which one?
No. Yeah. So, I mean, again, you're talking to the product manager here. So, we have like if you talk to one of our regulation experts, they'll talk about, this regulation and, the political environment, all this kind of stuff. I don't really like my focus has always been how to solve the problems with technology, software, hardware, that kind of stuff. So for me, it's like, I just see, again, if you go to the field, if you've done inspections, you see, you're just like, okay, well, how do we improve this? Right. And some stuff makes sense. Some stuff doesn't. Right. And without saying too much, again, like I don't want to take content away from the presentation, but some stuff like virtual reality, you talk to people that jump on the bandwagon of every new thing that pops out, they'll tell you that, virtual reality can be used in LDAR. Like, no, it can't, right? It can't. Don't waste your time. And you look at drones. The drones are a huge thing, but there's limitations, right? Like you don't get a drone or a robot or something to walk and be able to tell if a threaded connection is leaking or not. Like, you just can't do. It's very important to like recognize the technologies that are coming out or that are out and are coming out in the future.
The limitations as well.
But more importantly, like how they apply and whether they're practical or not. It doesn't matter how cool they are. It's like you have to stick with practicality. And there's certain things, like, good example, QR codes. For the most part, terrible, right? And thank God it's kind of over now, but I don't know how many years ago it was. Every marketing company in the world thought that the best idea is to slap, QR codes on the side of their vans, billboards and stuff, right? And you're like, why? Like, there was zero value there, zero value. Now we use QR codes at Central because we print off tags, like leaker tags,
right?
And now when a maintenance guy comes up and scans it, it allows him to enter in a repair, right? Or see the leaking video right there, the IR video right on his phone or his tablet, and then enter a repair, and it goes into the system. So that's cool. Like that is actually a good use case for it. So yeah, so you have to, cool technology is cool, great, but then also figure out how you can use it in a practical sense. There's one or two things coming out in the future that kind of, like we have a bit of a skunkworks department in Central that their sole job, it's not to build SR-71 planes, but it's to basically keep us 3 to 5 years ahead of technology.
Well, it's good to know that you guys are actively thinking about it. And so, that was going to be my next question is, what are you guys doing? How are you guys focusing your efforts over the next 5 to 10 years to align with that? But seems like you already hit it in the head. I had no idea that you guys have your own innovation department, if you will. That must be an interesting process to manage.
Yeah, it is cool. And sometimes I wish I could spend more time there instead of just kind of seeing what they're coming up with. But I think with software particularly, it's almost required. Like I think just things move so fast, and all the stuff I talked about, whether technology is actually like a QR code, like is it applicable or not? The same thing kind of applies with software.
Right.
And there are new software languages and frameworks and all that kind of stuff, techniques, right, coming out literally on the day, right? Every single day there's new stuff popping out. So first job is to know about that stuff. Second job is to filter through it and go, what's useful, and what's not, like what's going to be gone.
Yeah. Understanding the limitations of them all and seeing which one can actually be used within the context of operations as they sit today. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, that was actually my last question. And maybe we can ask Josh, if people want to find you, where can they go?
Well, I mean, best bet is www.central, so CNTR.al.
Got it.
And then, that's probably the best way to go.
Yeah, we'll make sure to have that website on the show notes. And then we really appreciate your time today. We look forward to your participation in the 4C conference. And I'm sure our audience is looking forward to your presentation as well. Josh, with that, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to the 4C as well. So hopefully everybody comes out to the talk and we get some good questions and whatnot.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.